Hi, welcome to the North Central Pennsylvania Energy Efficiency Roundtable on Lighting and Controls. I apologize that we're starting a couple minutes late. We had a bit of a technical difficulty, but I would like to thank everyone for taking time out of their busy schedules to log on with us today. My name is Jen Jones, and I will be your host throughout this webinar. I have just a few quick items of business to cover before we get started. If you have any technical difficulties accessing or hearing the presentation, please use the chat pod and we'll try to correct them promptly. This presentation will last approximately 40 to 50 minutes, followed by a question and answer period. And we're going to wait to answer any specific questions until that time to allow us to move through our material efficiently. If you have any questions after the webinar is over, please send them to us via email to pentap@psu.edu. We will funnel them to the appropriate person who will get back to you. This webinar is being recorded and will also be uploaded to the PennTap website at a later date, and you will receive a follow-up email notifying you when it is available. Before we introduce our presenters, I would like to provide you with a quick overview of the North Central Energy Efficiency Roundtable. Our mission of the group is to provide assistance to PA non-residential customers and reduce energy costs through improved energy management, energy efficiency, and cutting-edge technology. The Roundtable is planning to provide a forum for customers through 2 or 3 events per year to share information and attract experts on various energy topics, from energy efficient technologies to energy management strategies. As you can see, our group includes members from 12 different organizations, and collectively we serve Cameron, Center, Clarion, Clearfield, Clinton, Elk, Forest, Jefferson, Lycoming, McKean, Potter, Tioga, Union, and Venango counties. Again, my name is Jen Jones, and I am a technical advisor with PennTap, and I will be your host throughout today's webinar. Today, we will hear from 3 presenters: Bob Suiters from the Height Company, Ray Murphy from Franklin Energy, and Tim Frater from Willdan. Bob has been with the Height Company for 34 years and specializes in lighting, design, renovation, retrofit, and lighting control deployment. Bob is also active in the utility rebate programs for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and currently serves as the president of the Illuminating Engineering Society Pittsburgh section and received his lighting certification in 2015. Ray is the outreach manager for Franklin Energy, which manages the commercial and industrial energy efficiency programs for FirstEnergy's Pennsylvania utilities. Ray has over 20 years experience in the energy industry, with customer-facing and operational roles in both regulated and non-regulated organizations. Tim is the senior project manager for the FirstEnergy Solutions for Business programs. He has over 15 years of experience in the energy industry. And now I'm going to turn the webinar over to Bob, who will discuss lighting and controls. Bob, go ahead.
Thanks, Jen. Thanks, Liz. And thank you to PennTap for putting this together for us. So I'm going to probably talk to some of you that already know some of this, and I'm going to say some of you, maybe this is a completely new introduction to lighting and LED, and it's going to pretty much all be about LED. So we all know about LED. It's been around for a long time. So I'm just kind of maybe give you a quick little historical perspective of what it is and where it came from, and so on. So LED is a solid state device. So it operates on low voltage DC power. It's been around a long time, but it's not in the white version. Red's been around since 1962, I believe, used in avionics. It took a long time for them to get the red to look white and stay white. It naturally likes to revert back to blue, actually. So I'm going to say in the 90s, they came out with an early version of white, and it looked more blue than it did white. They kind of cleaned that up significantly now. And I think where we're at now is the white is not only 4000K white, which is like the old cool white, but it's also now you can tune it to pretty much anything you want, including what they call RGB, which is red, green, blue. And that's that color changing stuff you see on all the building facades and bridges and so on and so forth. But what LED is, it's a very highly efficient light source. It's extremely long life. It's vibration resistant. The actual diode itself really doesn't fail too often. It's usually the components around it that might fail. The cooler, the better for LEDs. They actually run a little bit brighter in cold weather. So you put it into a freezer in an outdoor environment, it loves that. It does require some electronics to make it work. It requires a driver. And if you're familiar with the old legacy systems, fluorescence had a ballast and metal halide had a ballast and so on. So very similar, but it's an electronic driver now. And it's very easily controlled and it's easily dimmed. And we really couldn't dim the old metal halide and high pressure sodium. And even fluorescent was dimmed, but it wasn't dimmed that effectively. So that's all changing. It's getting much better now. So what are the basic components? So you have basically two components that make it work. It's the diode and it's the power supply, which is converting your AC to DC, and usually a low voltage from 12 to 48 volts. It depends on the manufacturer. So that's what you need to make it work. The heat sink is necessary to give it a long life because that little diode is very, very hot. And people think a lot of times LED is really cool to the touch. It is because you're effectively managing the thermals on that. So you need a good heat sink on it. The lens or the optic is more or less a visual comfort and for aesthetics. And then we're finding out now there's really a need for surge protection because that seems to be the issue we're having that takes the drivers out, and that's surge. And that could be a spike. It could be something in the plant that's causing a surge, like a large motor, an elevator, and so on, or even outside sources. It could also be lightning, for that matter. We're going to talk about Kelvin temperature, and I thought it'd be good to review Kelvin temperature because that's a common term today, but in the past we simply had cool white and warm white, and we didn't really think much more of it. But now Kelvin temperature basically is the appearance of the light, and if you can see that little chart there, that little bar, I should say, you can see where some of the legacy sources fall in, such as metal halide and halogen, and even incandescent, which is around 2700 K. So the warmer the light is in appearance, the lower the temperature is. So 2700 K would be that light bulb on the left side there, if you will. Used a lot in the home, residential, and hospitality. And then you get to the whites, and then even the blue white, which is more in the 6000 K, which is kind of ugly looking, but it's used in some places. So we're going to use, when we reference K, that's what we're talking about. The mainstream really is in the neighborhood of 3000 to 5000. That's what we see every day in the office environments and the manufacturing and so on. So usually you can see just about everything in I'm going to say 35 to 4000 is the most common right now. So in the early days, if you remember purchasing an LED light fixture, maybe, or a light bulb 10 years ago, it kind of looked kind of ugly, white, blue, white. It didn't look that appealing to the eye. That's about the best they could do. They really couldn't warm it up a little bit. And it did have some problems. It had problems with flickering. It had problems when you put it on a dimmer. At times you could have a group of light bulbs or even light fixtures, and they really didn't all look the same. But they quickly improved these things, these issues we've had. And I think we're at a point now that we have very few issues in the marketplace with LED. There might be one or two, but for the most part, it's been cleaned up pretty good. We have a very wide range of Kelvin temperature now. We have tunable lighting, which we're going to talk about in a minute. And we have, of course, RGB lighting, which is the color changing LED. The future is kind of exciting. What's coming next is a lot of light fixtures now have selectability. They have a switch that you can dial in the Kelvin temperature that you want above the light, above the ceiling, or you can actually dial in the wattage that you want. So you have a high, medium, and low setting. This is very common now. Another thing happening is power over Ethernet, PoE, and that's basically using low voltage category data cabling to power light fixtures. So this would dramatically lower the labor to install the cabling and the power for this. Power grid ceilings is another pretty cool thing, where imagine the grid itself is energized with the low voltage source. The new light fixture set on the grid and it lights up. So this is being worked on now, and there's companies doing a lot of research on that. And then connected lighting, which is just another term we use for lighting that is a mesh network that talks to one another. So you can now, you can now control a group of lights from your iPad or your phone, and you can change the settings of them, and you can give them direction, and you can get notifications that if one's out, you'll get a notification of it. This is really big in street lighting right now, smart cities, and that's something that you're going to see coming. Let's see if I can go back one slide. I skipped that one there. So current market conditions. So I would say 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I would say pricing was dropping, but it's not dropping like anything else right now. It has stabilized and it's starting to go up a little bit. So we think we've seen the bottom of the price erosion with LED now. What's more of a concern is potential for shortages right now, because a lot of the diodes are made in Asia, and some of the other components are made overseas. So we have a potential for shortages. We haven't seen anything terrible yet, but we really don't have a crystal ball. We've seen efficiency improve. A lot of the LED tubes that you see in the light bulbs are now much more efficient than 5 years ago. We can now use a 12-watt light bulb to give you 100 watts of light, 100-watt equivalent of light. The fixture life has doubled now. We've seen light fixtures in the beginning, 50,000 hours was pretty much the common. Now we're seeing it's not uncommon to find 150,000, 200,000 hours of life. And the fixture warranties are pretty much all the same. For the most part, the industry is at 5 years, which is still a lot better than the legacy sources. When you would buy a metal halide floodlight or a high bay, it was a 1-year warranty. So a lot better in that sense. A few compatibility issues. We do have one thing that keeps coming up, and that is if you have a large space like a school auditorium or a music hall, and you have what they call a large dimming panel or dimming rack, the compatibility when you upgrade the lighting in there, whether they're down lights or spotlights, there seems to be some issues with compatibility on dimming racks. And I believe the dimming companies are working on that right now. Most likely it would be a modification or some sort of add-on to the rack to make it work. So maybe some of you are thinking about changing your lights. Maybe some of you've already done it. Obviously, it's going to happen whether you want to do it or not, because simply the legacy light sources are just not going to be around. And I don't think there's any company that's putting any research and development into metal halide or fluorescent or high pressure sodium or incandescent. Any new construction is not going to have anything but LED on it. So the time has never been better. I mean, a lot of times it's living with the existing lights that are failing, repair costs that might make you do something. But the energy savings is the big story. The energy savings is just significant compared to some of these other sources. But when you do an upgrade, you have an opportunity now to do other things. You have an opportunity to maybe improve the light levels, and for safety, for security, and just for worker comfort. You're going to get a longer life. So that's going to reduce your maintenance savings. And think about dimming. A lot of times you don't think you need dimming, but dimming is just another way to squeeze more energy savings out of that light source. Instead of having a light that's 100% on or 100% off, perhaps you can dim it a little bit and you can trim the lighting based upon the floor space. For example, maybe in manufacturing, final inspection, you might want it as bright as possible, but maybe in the warehouse, you don't need it as bright. So by dimming it, you're saving more energy. A gymnasium is another good example of that, where the old high school gyms used to have metal halide and the lights would, turn on at 6 o'clock in the morning and they'd leave them burn all day long, because it would take 10 or 15 minutes for that light to cool off and come back on again. So they just left them on. Well, now not only can you dim the lights and you can switch them, you have instant on capabilities with LED, but now imagine having a basketball game, you have the lights on 100%, and now you have an awards ceremony, maybe you dim it down a little bit, and you dim it down to 40 or 50% to give it a nice effect. Again, when you dim, you save energy. Utilizing sensors is another thing. It is the energy code. The energy code right now, for the most part, forces automatic shut off. It's not automatic on, it's automatic shut off. in nearly every space. So whether you like it or not, when you do some new construction, you're going to see sensors, and you might want to think about sensors for any retrofits you do, because how often do you change your lights? You know, if you upgrade your lights, then maybe you may not do it again for 20 years or 30 years. So it's good to spend some time and think about what you want to do and think about the technology that you might want to use. It's interesting what's happening with sensors nowadays, and I'll get into that here in a couple of slides down the road. This is one of the biggest, I guess, the biggest falsehoods with LED lighting. A lot of people have said in the past that LED will last forever. Well, we're now 10 or 15 years into it, and we're finding out they're not lasting forever. So they're going to fail, but they're going to fail in a different way. With LED, there is a life rating on an LED fixture, but the hour rating on it, the hours, is not failure like the old sources. It's what they call L70. It's when the light loses 30% of its light. It's considered an industry standard for comparison. So if you have a new LED fixture in your warehouse, for example, and it's rated 50,000 hours, that's 50,000 hours where it will lose 30% of its light, not where it's going to fail. It'll keep burning and burning a long, long time after that. So I'm going to give you an example in the next slide here of that. Let's take a really common source here is metal halide 400 watt, which is the blue line. You can see that's a 20,000 hour rated light bulb. If you look at the green line coming across, that is a 50,000 hour L70. If you look at the line, it's L70, 50,000 hours. So it's giving you a lot more light over a longer period of time. But let's put the metal halide on that same plane. So let's look at where does it lose 30% of its light? It loses it right around 6,000 hours. So if you use the same metric, we're looking at 6,000 hours versus 50,000 hours. So you can see, you know, the advantage of LED is just phenomenal when it comes to extended maintenance and reduced maintenance cost. So a lot of times we look at the choices: do we put new fixtures up or do we retrofit? Well, obviously the new fixture is always the best way to go, and usually it is more costly, but we all have a budget, and if our budget says we can only spend X number of dollars, maybe there's a way to retrofit some of these fixtures out. You know, retrofitting it's a lower upfront cost. Usually you still get some sort of rebate out of that. You're saving some energy. At times it's less labor, depending on what you do. Obviously the benefits of the new fixtures are going to be much longer life, more choices. It's going to look better aesthetically because it's brand new. And again, both options would give you rebate opportunities. So these are some of the fixtures you might have in your facility. Every single one of these is able to be retrofitted or changed out. Every single one of these is a legacy source that's discontinued now, no longer made. So the industrial high bays might be the area that I spend the most time in, and that is basically looking for opportunities to improve light levels, to reduce the cost, the operating cost, the energy cost. Take advantage of controls, whether we want to dim these lights or whether we want to put them on sensors to turn the lights out when the area is vacant. Two areas that really you need to focus on before you just go and buy anything is ingress protection. Okay, the ability, the IP rating, that's the ability for that light to keep out dirt, dust, contaminants. And if you don't address that up front, you could have some real problems down the road. And the other thing is surge protection. Surge protection, all of these fixtures have a surge built into them. They all have some level. Usually it's around 6 kV, maybe outdoor, it might be 10 kV. If you have an area that's subject to surge issues, you might already know that. There's some ways to address that. You can put higher levels of surge in the lights. You can also put dedicated surge on your equipment coming in, your panel board. You can also put circuit surge protection. I don't want to scare you away, but I mean, surge is what's going to take a driver out. The diode itself is just going to keep burning forever. So if your driver takes the hit, it's probably going to just not come on at all, or the light's going to flash. Now that high-end temperature rating is something important also, and the specification sheet will have that on there. So that's very, very important in an industrial setting where you might have some heat processes or a furnace, it's very important to know that you don't exceed the temperature rating of that light. And every single one of these light fixtures are going to have a temperature rating on it. And they're not all the same. So something to be aware of. So this is just a quick, we're not going to get bogged down in all the numbers here, but this is just a quick example in an industrial setting. If you've got the old legacy sources there and they're burning long hours, you probably have a potential for a really good financial reward here. You know, the payback, it's not unusual to see paybacks of a year or 2 years. It, you know, comes down to the numbers, the economics of the calculation. And that is, if you have long hours, operating hours, if you have old legacy sources and you have a high utility cost, that's the makings of a great project. And then you can throw in the benefit of a great rebate to offset your initial outlay. And it's just, I've done a project recently, a parking garage, and the payback was 3 months. So it doesn't get much better than that. Now, remember, if you do nothing, you're still paying for a project through higher energy costs. You're just not getting the project. So there is a cost of waiting for sure. Now you throw in the challenge we have with legacy sources, not even being able to get some of these metal halide ballasts and so on. I think the time is to act right now, at least put the wheels in motion. Maybe the most common thing you might have in your offices are linear fixtures, and there's a lot of choices with these things to retrofit them with the tubes or the drivers, to change the lights out. If the fixtures are in nice shape, or maybe it's a specialty fixture, like a vapor-proof or waterproof fixture in a bathroom, something like that, or maybe you have something above the ceiling that's asbestos that you don't want to disturb it, then maybe retrofitting is the best choice to go. But it's probably a good time to think about this thing here that came out 10 years ago, whenever it was, the flat panel. It's phenomenal because it's something that didn't exist 10 years ago. And it probably outsells all the other sources by, I don't know, 30 to 1, maybe more. It's extremely economical. It looks great. It's rebate eligible, a very generous rebate for these. It's available in all the common sizes, whether you recess it or whether you surface mount it. And out of the box, it's dimmable. So imagine putting these in your conference room. Now you can have a dimming feature on these fixtures here for AV presentations and so on. Basically, it's everything you would want in a very economical package. And we're not going to get into pricing on this, but this fixture is less money than the old legacy counterpart, the fluorescent fixture. So I think what we're seeing on recessed, especially recessed linear, is the flat panels really taking over the entire market, and we're not seeing many retrofits done anymore on linear. Now, you may have a lot of sockets here. You may have a lot of fixtures. You may have, stairwell fixtures and office fixtures and everything else. If you do want to retrofit, there's some easy ways to do it. The industry calls it A, B, and C. It's just three methods to retrofit that out. You probably have seen these tubes, and I bet you most of you have some of these in your facility already. But there's 3 types. The type A is the most common, and that is you basically just take the bulb out and put the new one in. It works off the ballast. Extremely easy. There's no labor involved except changing a light bulb. Low initial cost. It's going to cut your energy in half, approximately in half. Ballast compatibility is an issue. You need to test it, because if your ballast is an old source that's 120 volt dedicated or 277 dedicated, it will not work for that. It needs to be a multi-volt ballast. Those were installed probably in the mid 80s forward. You probably have the right ballast in there, but you really can't dim these. And if the ballast goes out, the light bulb's going to go out as well. So just something to think about. One thing on these, it's worth noting that if you have emergency lights that run from a generator or even a battery pack, these will not work well on those. So you might want to leave those emergency lights the way they are, or just change it to a new fixture. So that's a type A, the most common in the industry. There's another type that's caught on, the type B, and that's where you bypass it. You just take that ballast out of the circuit and you're wiring those sockets direct. A little bit of wiring involved. It's still low initial cost, still going to cut your energy in half. I'm not a big fan of them myself. I think there's a safety issue. You're basically bypassing the ballast, so you've got 120 or 277 directly to the sockets. And if someone comes along and puts a fluorescent lamp back in there, You could have some sparking. You could have some issues there. I'm not a big fan of that. As a matter of fact, when you buy that, they even give you warning labels to put on the fixtures. So that kind of gives you an example. Maybe it's something to avoid. But if you really want to retrofit and you want to maximize your energy savings, you can also use a driver that looks just like the ballast. It fits in the same footprint, and it'll allow you to use that driver with dedicated LED tubes. So it's a system. So you get a longer warranty. You get about an 8-year warranty out. What you see in that photo there. You get a greater energy savings, and it's a safety feature built in that if somebody would put a fluorescent in that, it's not going to light. It just won't light. So it's dedicated for that. We're seeing that done where you want maximum energy savings, but the fixtures might be pretty good shape. Maybe they're special fixtures, they're expensive fixtures. This is a way to consider getting you up to speed and getting you with the times and taking advantage of the savings from LED. I'm going to say exterior is probably the one area that remains. I'm not going to say it's untouched yet, but there's just so many of the old legacy sources out there yet that continue to be slowly upgraded to LED. You have wall packs, floodlights, parking lot. You have every type you recognize as you have these all around your building. And you can retrofit. And if you take a look at the photo of those two fixtures on the bottom there, the one on the left is an old metal halide legacy. You notice what's behind it is a reflector, because it had to generate all that energy and that wattage in the hopes of some of that light would bounce back forward from that reflector. So an awful lot of light and therefore energy is wasted inside of that light because the bulb is emitting light 360 degrees. The LED is 180 degrees, so it's a forward throw. So we can do a lot more. We can do a lot more light with less wattage and less energy. And therefore, we're not replacing it with the same lumen. So that's why a lot of times you look at the lumen comparison, which is the amount of light that's emitted from a source. You can do a lot. You can throw a lot more light with less lumens on LED because it's all going forward. So all these sources can be retrofitted. There are LED corn cob lamps, as we call them in that photo there. But again, even it's a cost-effective solution, but the light is emitted 360 degrees. So it's probably not the most efficient source as compared to maybe an LED fixture that's forward throw. All of these have come down in price, but again, I think the price erosion is pretty much done now. It's stabilized. If anything, it's probably went up 10 or 15% in the last 6 months. It used to be the corn cob lamps were not available in 480 volt. Now there's a way around that with a small transformer. So if you have 480 volt parking lot lights, you can update those now with 480 if you have 480 volt with the corn cob. But the outdoor lights, many of them, the lights can be dim now. So again, that's another thing that you can dim lights, or you can put them on midnight dimming or sensing, where maybe the lights aren't burning 100% all night long now. You can squeeze more energy savings out of your project that way. Something to think about. So if you do a quick side-by-side, I'm going to say we probably retrofit as many projects as we put new fixtures. It's still pretty popular, retrofitting. The biggest challenge with any of these is just getting the bucket truck and the cost of going up in the air to fix it. So if you think about that, then the new fixtures makes more sense because you're going to have a much longer life. You're not going to go back and change light bulbs every few years. You might be putting up a 25 or 30-year product when you use a new fixture. In the new fixture now, it gives you some options on the controls. You can do some things on top of that fixture now that you couldn't do with the old sources. You can put sensing up there. You can put a mesh network. You can control the lights. You can dim the lights. You can do anything you want with it. To the point now, we're seeing some controls that we can actually put for interior fixtures. We can put asset tracking and wayfinding, so we can do some things. It's really cool with fixtures now as the hub for the controls. I'm going to review this just for a second. This is probably something that everybody knows, but just we use these terms an awful lot. KWH, kilowatt hours, is simply 1,000 hours. 1,000 watts. Burning 1 hour is a kilowatt hour. So we use that because we want to review that because we use that a lot when we calculate energy savings. We look at the simple payback, and we're talking in KWH and It's good to know the foundation of that, and kind of ties into the next slide here with the simple payback. So simple payback is a quick way for us to just give you a snapshot of what your payback might be, but it's not an economic analysis. It's not a life cycle cost or anything like that. Your actual savings would be much greater if you would do a life cycle cost analysis and you factor in your labor. You factor in your labor of changing light bulbs and ballast over time. Even the cost of money, of financing this project if you're going to finance it. But simple payback is a real quick snapshot for you to get an understanding whether you're looking at a 5-year payback or a 2-year payback. And I'm going to say in most cases, most interior, 3-year payback is extremely easy to get now. Exterior, it depends on what you have going on, but you have some more labor costs on the exterior side. But with the right situation, we've seen an awful lot of paybacks of 1 year, 1.5 year. Again, that rebate's going to really make a nice contribution to your project. And the other guys can talk a bit about it, but I don't know. The rebate numbers are not going to be here forever. The dollars are going to be here, for how long, and they might change. So I wouldn't bank on it as always being there. I would say if you're going to do a project, let's take advantage of that money. So if you got a couple things going for you to help you, if you've got high KWH costs, and hopefully what you're paying right now, you might be in the neighborhood of 8 cents or 9 cents, I don't know, 15 cents, 7 cents. Residentially, you'd be surprised what it is. It's pretty high. But the higher the KWH cost and the longer your hours, they're the key ingredients to getting a good payback. Obviously, you want, the lower wattage you put in, the better it is. The savings are going to be greater. And you need to factor in, of course, your material costs. The lower the cost, the better it is. The rebate is kind of like set. If you look at the asterisk there, those 3 items are pretty much set. Your KWH is set in stone. Your hours are pretty much set in stone. And whatever the rebate is what it is. But boy, if you're running 2 shifts or 3 shifts, and you have an old legacy source there, you really need to reach out to somebody to help you, because I think you'd be surprised what the savings would be and how quickly it would pay for itself. So not all product is created equal, I guess. It's just like buying a washing machine or a car. Yeah, I don't know who's controlling that. I'm controlling that slide. Here we go. Sorry about that. So product quality, we're going to show you maybe a quick spec sheet, but really what you want to do in product quality, you want to do your homework a little bit. There are some companies now, I'm going to say, that got into the LED business 15 years ago, and they're no longer around anymore. So you really need to think about the strength of the manufacturer you're dealing with. It's very tempting to go online and buy something. It's very tempting to go on Amazon. We've all done it. But you need to know what you're buying, because a lot of these manufacturers are just here for the sizzle, and they're not going to be around later on. So, you want to look at the reputation of the manufacturer. You want to look at the IES standards. What all this is going to boil down to is find a trusted partner in the industry that that you trust, that work with you, because we do lighting all day long. That's all we do. So we're going to guide you toward the right solution. It's not always the most expensive solution. It may not be the cheapest solution. It's going to be the right solution for you, for your environment, for your need. When you're looking for DLC, that's something we're going to do for you. We're going to make sure that it's rebate eligible. We're looking for DLC. We're looking for the temperature and the surge protection and the ingress protection rating. We're looking at warranty and life. But this is something we do every day, and I highly recommend that take your time. If you're going to do a project, just take a little bit of time to look at it and think about controls and think about all these things we've been talking about. Now, most manufacturers don't want you to see the specification sheet. They give you a little glossy brochure on how beautiful the light looks. But the specification sheet, that's the nuts and bolts. That's what you want to look at. You dig into that thing, and it's going to tell you everything. What it's really going to tell you is where not to use it as well. It's going to give you its limitations. And we live by this. We live by the spec sheet. It's going to give you the important things, the hours, the temperature rating. It's going to tell you the things not to do with it as well. Every light fixture has a spec sheet. Every single one. Every light bulb has a spec sheet. Every tube has a spec sheet. I would highly recommend looking at it or having your specialist, your lighting specialist, look at that. That's what we do for a living. You know, we talked a lot about light fixtures here. I think we're going to talk about controls for a little bit now. So maybe some of you are using lighting controls, and if you have a switch in your office, that's a lighting control, obviously. But the new code is calling now for automatic shut off in many spaces, just about every space, such as an office or restroom. Even a stairwell should be controlled where it goes to a lower setting when it's unoccupied. So lighting controls would be anything that we mentioned here, you know, switches and dimmers and timers and photocells, all that's controls. Now we're seeing both wired and wireless controls, do a lot of wireless. Local spaces, which is a room control, and then building wide control. And also, you know, again, it's the code in Pennsylvania. It's code in many states. So if you're not using controls, you should think about it. You know, there's two basic types of occupancy control. These are room controls, okay? There's occupancy mode, and vacancy mode. The difference, well, they both turn the lights off when nobody's there. One forces you to turn the light on, the other one is automatic on. If you can imagine which one might be, you know, more energy saving, its vacancy mode is a little bit more energy saving because it's not going to turn the light on when you jump, you know, walk in your office and throw your keys on your desk. It's not going to cycle the lights on, or if somebody walks by the door. Vacancy mode forces you to turn that on. So it's a little bit more efficient, you know, from an energy savings standpoint. And by the way, most of these have a complete set of controls underneath a plate with small dip switches. And these will allow you to change timing, change sensitivity, to enable or disable the photocell on it for daylight. So when you have one of these put in, if it's not behaving the way you like, it's a very good chance there's going to be a set of controls underneath that plate that allow you to tweak it or commission it a little bit in order for it to behave the way you prefer it to behave. Many of them even allow you to switch from vacancy to occupancy underneath that plate. So, and if you don't know what you're doing, just find the part number on it, you Google it, you find the spec sheet, and it'll walk you through it. These are some rough numbers, but this is the energy saving you can achieve by using sensors rather than just using a switch. Of course, every application is a little bit different. But, you know, I walk in a space, I'll walk into a warehouse and I'll see that there's, you know, 10 aisles of material in the warehouse and no activity there, or one person walking around. And that's a good indicator right there that, wow, you could be, you know, you could be doing something here. If you don't turn the lights off, maybe have the lights go down to 30% if nobody's in there. It really depends on your application, what you want. Some people, they don't like to see darkness. Some people want video cameras to be able to see everything. So, but again, if you're going to look at LED to save energy, let's look at lighting controls to save even more energy beyond that. And I think some of the rebate programs are now considering and including now some lighting controls as part of the eligibility. I mentioned Tunable. Tunable is kind of a pretty cool light source that's catching on in some areas right now, but it basically allows you to just the same way you would dim a light, this allows you to tune in or change the color of the light. You can do that manually, or you can do it automatically throughout the day to follow the circadian rhythm. So imagine in the morning, the lights might be, you know, 5,000 K or 6,000 K. And as the day goes on, it warms up gradually over the period of time. So they're testing these in applications such as hospitals, for sleep studies, for also classrooms, where they can measure the effects of the various types of light, Kelvin temperature of light versus testing and so on, and behavior of the students. So it's coming. It's never going to be mainstream, I don't think. It will be more specialized, but the point is that we can do a lot of things with LED that we can never do before with the conventional, you know, fluorescent sources. So let's see here. So let's think about what we're going to do here. A lot of times we think, you know, I'm requested to maybe find some energy savings on a project, but in addition to that, we want to increase light levels, and that's one of the kind of like the catches here. When we have to dramatically increase the light level, we're giving up some of that energy savings. So a lot of times we'll start off with, we want the light levels to be 3 times as bright or whatever it is. And we do all the numbers, and then the customer will say, well, why isn't the energy savings any better than that? Well, it's because we didn't just go straight out for one on the light levels. So it's kind of like a, the balance knob on your speaker there on your stereo, if you remember that balance. So we can do everything. We can save energy. We can improve the light levels. We can, improve the aesthetics of the space. But just know that, know going in what you want to do, because, when it's done, you're going to live with that lighting for, the next 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, whatever that it might be. It's a great opportunity to improve the light levels with the option to still control the light levels. I have one customer now that completely did their warehouse, and they're using a wired Cat 5 wired system where they control their lights down to an iPad. Each light is an icon. So he's already made changes to the floor based upon their changes to their assembly and their production process, where he has all the lights trimmed down to where they need it at around 80%, but other spaces he has trimmed down for even greater than that. And as the floor space changes, he can dial that in and change that without having to call an electrician. You don't have to get up on a truck or on a ladder or forklifts or lifts or anything like that. So it's good to think about what you're going to do before you just dive into it. The energy costs, let's face it, electricity is going up. It's going up. We know that for a fact. It's safe to say that maintenance costs is going up, labor is going up. So this is really a great time to capture all that and decide, where do you want to be with your lighting? Because the energy savings is guaranteed. It really is. And the legacy sources are to the point now that there are some ballast and some light bulbs that are just impossible to get now. The manufacturers of these things are just getting out of the business pretty quick. There's no money to be made to make high pressure sodium light bulbs and metal halide and all that other stuff. So it's happening. But think about your trusted partner, whoever that might be. You might have somebody you like working with, a distributor or whatever. The thing is, they're going to guide you through this journey. Okay, that's their job. They're going to make sure you don't miss anything. And if you have an issue down the road, it's going to be fixed because the manufacturer is going to be there. They're going to be there to fix whatever problem might be. And, you're always going to have some issues, but there are many of these companies that have completely gone away. And so, we just want you to make some good decision. Again, grab those rebate dollars. I think these guys are going to guide you to some of this. You're paying into this fund. It's a great opportunity to get some of your money back now. I would highly recommend you considering that. So if you need to contact me, I'm available, of course. You may know us anyways, because I think we have locations in some of your areas, but I believe in professional courtesy. So even if you have any question at all, you want me to give you a reference to somebody, or you need me to give you a name or a part number, whatever it is, I'm here to help you. That's all I'm here. I'm here to help you. If you need anything, be happy to help you out. So I'll stick around in case you might have some questions here later on. I think I'm going to turn this over now to, I think we're going to turn this over to Ray perhaps next.
All right, great, thanks. Do I think I have control? Nope, I don't. Hold on. Okay, thanks. So thanks, Jen. Thanks, Bob. Great information. Got a ton of information there, very helpful. And I know it'll kind of help us, lead us into this next section. And I'm going to try and go through this a little bit quick, just in an essence of time. So over the next few minutes, I want to talk a little bit about the opportunities available in the FirstEnergy operating company areas. All right, so that's MedEd, Penn Power, Penelec, and West Penn Power. Oops. Went too far. Hold on, I'm learning it. There you go. So first, I'd like to take a minute to kind of set the table and identify the roles and responsibilities. Right. So Act 129 is a state mandated energy efficiency program for all customers. Right. I think everybody's pretty familiar with it, that are active within the FirstEnergy, actually active within Pennsylvania. For us specifically, we're working with the FirstEnergy team. Right. So all active customers, as Bob mentioned, pay a monthly fee into this program. However, each customer can also, again, as Bob mentioned, receive substantial incentives based on their savings incurred from the installation of the new equipment. Franklin Energy and Wildan, Tim will be speaking next, have been contracted by FirstEnergy to implement the program and work with their customers to assist them in the application process and really walk you through the program. As one of the program implementers, Franklin, us, right, we manage the prescriptive, custom, and midstream programs. So here are a couple of our two key people that you can contact with questions, problems, concerns, issues. Deanna Weaver is the program manager. She's ultimately responsible for everything that happens from the Franklin side within the FirstEnergy program. And then my name, as Jen and Bob mentioned, I'm Ray Murphy. I am the program or the outreach manager, really the customer facing or the customer operations side. We have 7 energy advisors scattered throughout the territory. So if you're not sure who to contact or whatever, if you reach out to me, I can get you to the right person. So what programs do we hit? So, as I mentioned, we have the following programs. We have prescriptive, custom, and midstream. We work with the large commercial, small commercial and industrial, and then the government, nonprofits along those lines. And this slide's pretty self-explanatory, so I won't read into it too far. I can't get it to go. There you go. I'll get the hang of this soon. So a couple, high-level rules and regulations for it regarding the rebates. So the effective dates, we took over from June 1st, 2021 through May 31st, 2026. And there is a 180-day look back, right? So I think that 180-day today goes back to December 9th. So if you've had a project that was installed, from that point on, please, don't hesitate to give us a call. Does have to be new equipment. Pre-approval is not required. Recommended, suggested, right? So I know there's a couple areas where people are unsure and they're just not sure if it's going to apply. The only caveat to that would be if it's a custom application, all right, it definitely needs to be pre-approved. If it's a lighting application, in some of the places that Bob may have been speaking of, if it creates greater than 750,000 kWh in savings, it does need a pre-approval. Right, and basically just give us a yell ahead of time. Our team will help walk you through the program, filling out the appropriate paperwork and making sure we get the people out there to do the pre-checks. Must be DLC or Energy Star. All right, in terms of this, it is 5 cents per kilowatt hour, okay, for lighting up to 100% of the equipment cost. And we do have custom rebates, kind of looking at lighting right now, but overall, custom rebates are something really outside the box, right? They don't fit specifically with the prescriptive, which is, $1 for this, $1 for that type of a deal. And as the whole program requirements are down below that you can follow. 2 other rebate rules that we must apply by would be, we do need a W-9 that is within 2 years of you submitting it. And I know there's some questions around that. So when you turn your project in, if you give us a W-9 that is dated on that date, we're good. And then FirstEnergy does require wet signatures on all their paperwork. All right. So how do we find it? So you would go to our website right here. As you can see, there's numerous segments available. If you click on commercial lighting right there, that's going to take you to this screen, right? Right there, if you click on incentives, okay, that's going to bring up this sheet that walks you through all of the different lighting opportunities that you can participate in, many of them that Bob just spoke about. So pretty easy to find. All right, so incentives are available for LED lamps, bulbs, exit signs, as Bob mentioned, occupancy and lighting controls, right? Outdoor area lighting, reach-in freezer, I think that was another one that Bob mentioned about. Only new equipment is eligible. The occupancy controls may not have a manual on switch, okay, so there can't be an override. New controls must replace the manual switching system, all right, and occupancy sensors installed as part of a new construction project in areas where sensors are required by code are not eligible. All right, so again, went through this fairly quick to allow everybody a little bit of time to digest it. As Jen said, these will all be sent out, in the future. Our partner in working with the FirstEnergy, team is Will Dan, right? So real quick, easy slide here. We do prescriptive, midstream, custom, and I'll turn it over to Tim. He can start talking about the Will Dan side.
Appreciate it, Ray. Thank you so much. Hopefully I know how to maneuver this screen. Hold on 1 minute. Let's see if I'm moving this thing. Oh, there we go. Okay, so my name is Tim Frater. I'm the program manager for the Energy Solutions for Business program for the 4 operating companies in Pennsylvania, FirstEnergy operating companies in Pennsylvania. Real quick, we have basically 3 different programs from kind of cradle to grave. So we have what we call our building tune-up program, which covers lighting controls, HVAC, refrigeration. We also have a custom program, so for new construction, and I won't go into a lot of detail today, but if you're looking at constructing a new building or doing a major renovation, we have a program that'll assess that. And then also from retro commissioning side of things. Real quick, in reference to the building tune-up program, really, to Bob's point earlier, it's to help reduce your energy footprint, capitalize on all the new technologies that's out there, and reduce your front costs and reduce your return on investment. So really the biggest difference in what Ray pointed out, we do not have the 180-day look back. You'll see as I go through the next 2 slides, FirstEnergy has some very aggressive targets for energy efficiency throughout the state of Pennsylvania in the next 5 years to work with their customers. And these really complement their customers' efforts in achieving those goals. Really, it's driven to look at multiple projects, lighting being on the forefront and being very attractive in doing that and getting ahead of the curve. So our program, you need to enroll, submit before you start a project. Once that project is started or completed, you'd have to go to Ray's program at Franklin to get any type of rebate. But real quick, if you look at, and I apologize, I'm doing a terrible job with the slides, but as far as lighting incentives, real quick, in the way this is set up, and once again, the driver of the program is to help a customer reduce their return on investment, the timeline. So if a project is almost solely lighting, the program will pay you 25 cents per annual kilowatt hour saved for that lighting reduction or the energy reduction, and it's capped at 50% of the cost. The next tier is if you do multiple projects. So let's say that you have some refrigeration, you're a convenience store, you do lighting, you do some refrigeration, or let's say you're a campus setting where you have food service, and the lighting is only on total reduction between 75 and 85%. And there's other measures that have savings involved. Your incentive per kilowatt hour is basically 30 cents, and it will cap at 60% of the project cost. If the total savings on for your project and lighting contributes under 75% of that total savings, you're up to 35 cents a kilowatt hour saved annually for the incentive, and it's capped at 80%. Really, what is the driver behind that? It gives customers the opportunity to look at additional measures being HVAC, refrigeration, food service, HVAC tune-up, to help increase and make it much more economically attractive to lower your total overall energy footprint. And what's on this, once again, lighting, HVAC tune-up, HVAC, and also refrigeration is on the programs. Very simple process, like Ray had talked about, same way. There's an enrollment just to make sure that the project is acceptable, and you're able to evaluate the impact of the incentives on the project itself. Then you have the implementation itself. We do basically kind of an audit, making sure that once again, what you say is it's a pre-inspection. Do a measurement and verification in reference to the equipment that is being removed and equipment being installed, and the final incentives are paid. Who's it available to? Any FirstEnergy customer, either small or large commercial and industrial projects across the footprint of Pennsylvania. Two other programs that we have, like I said, retro commissioning. Retro commissioning is no different than kind of tuning up your car in reference to, putting in a new building management system, along with other things, doing the tuning that will give you incentives to offset that cost. And then we also have what we call the commercial new construction and building improvement. Once again, that is more from a design aspect. If you're doing a major renovation or, building on a greenfield site. And once again, we take a look at the prints, give you an evaluation of, are there things that you can improve, what your incentives will be with your design or improvements of those designs. But once again, applicable if the equipment hasn't been bought and you're in the design stage. Real quick, the way that we're structured to cover Pennsylvania. Once again, I'm the program manager. Offices for Pennsylvania, we're in Greensburg. We also have outreach personnel in Penelec, Jamie Ribb, and then MedEd, Bob Ellis, so located throughout the state. So once again, if I can express anything, the FirstEnergy has become very aggressive in helping customers offset the cost of driving energy efficiency installations. The key to our programs is to get in front of it, take a look at it before you buy the equipment or install the facility. And also too, it gives you the opportunity to look at other measures, other energy reduction opportunities, and offset that cost to drive down your initial outlay, as Bob had talked about, because these technologies are great right now. A lot of the replacement, especially when you look at lighting and lighting controls, the cost of poker or availability is not there. So once again, FirstEnergy is trying to be very aggressive and work with their customers to drive those efficiencies. So I appreciate your time. And that's all I have.
There's 2 grants available. I'm going to do this very quickly, and then we will send out the slides for all of you so that you have a little bit more time to spend with the information we provided. And I still want there to be time for questions and answers. The grants that I'm going to discuss can be used in addition to the rebates that Tim and Ray spoke about. So they're a great way to even further offset the cost. The first grant that's out there is administered by the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection. It is called the Small Business Advantage Grant. It is for companies with 100 employees or less. And I would like to stress that is company-wide. So if you're held by a holding company, have multiple locations, it is 100 employees across the whole board, not just your one location. It's pretty easy to qualify for. You want to reduce your energy consumption by 25% and save $500 annually. And it pays for it'll offset the cost of equipment only. So additional things such as taxes, fees, labor to install, it will not cover. It is currently closed, but they will begin accepting applications sometime around the end of July. Last year's grant award was $5,000 max. We do anticipate that changing. In past years, it's been as high as $7,000. And when they open the grant, they will let us know. And then the second grant is the Rural Energy for America program, or REAP grant. This is administered through the United States Department of Agriculture, and you must meet the federal definition of a small business and be located within an eligible area, which would be a town outside of a town with 50,000 inhabitants or less. Again, that definition of the small business is your holding company, multiple locations and everything. The max grant award is $250,000 for energy efficiency projects and $500,000 for renewable energy projects. And they accept grants year round, and they are only awarded once or twice per year, depending on the size of the grant requested. And, if you have further questions about these grant programs, please feel free to reach out to me. My name again is Jen Jones, and my contact information is here on the screen. We will be having a funding webinar in July where we will go into great depth. I believe we will discuss the rebates again. We'll discuss both of those grant programs with the changes for the Small Business Advantage grant, and additional funding sources as well. And at this time, we can open the floor to questions. So just go ahead and enter them in the chat pod, and we'll answer them as necessary.
Jen, while we're waiting for questions, one thing I'll just clarify, I'll throw out there. So Wildan and Franklin, Tim and I, we are not in competition with each other. So if you're not sure which program that it would apply for, please don't hesitate to reach out to either one of us. If it can work in our program, we'll take it. If it doesn't work in our program, we speak with Wildan and Tim and his team on a regular basis. So we throw it over the fence to him. So it's very much of a cooperative effort.
And then keep in mind too, those two grants that I spoke of, you can actually use the rebates. If you have 100 employees or less, you can use the Small Business Advantage grant. The REAP grant is a little competitive, so we have had clients qualify for both grants. One's just a little easier than the other, and those will be discussed in more depth in July. And I'm just going to stay on for a couple more minutes to see if there's any additional questions. So we have one. LED fixtures have been increasing in efficiency every month. When will efficiency level off, and should a customer wait for efficiency to increase? So I think that would be for Bob.
Right. Great question. We're at around 200 lumens per watt. So it's not unlimited. The upside is not unlimited. We don't know what the future holds, but I would say you're not going to see any dramatic improvements beyond that. The physics of it, you can only achieve so much. We went from 120 lumens per watt just a couple of years ago to pushing 200 now. And that's so important. And that's why we talk about controls, because we may not need, that's like 120 miles per gallon. If you think about it, you think about efficacy, which is what it is. That's why we really want to push controls, or at least have a conversation about controls before you just buy the lights. Now, that 200 lumens per watt is not every light fixture, and it's not every light bulb. That's in the best case scenario, we're seeing that. So what you want to do is combine that with the life, because that L70 is a big part of that discussion as well. So, lumens per watt is initial lumens per watt. So that could change as the fixture ages. And if you have a fixture that's 100,000 hours or above, it's a much better choice than something that's 50,000 hours. So I would say, because of just the combination of what's happening in the market right now, price increases coming, rebates are strong, utility costs are going to go up. Efficacy is pretty darn good right now. I mean, if there was ever a perfect storm, it's right now. It really is. And, we're saying that because we're starting to see some delays in getting certain products. Not so much on the lighting side, but on controls, we're starting to see some delays on some things right now. So hopefully that answers the question on the efficacy.
And then a follow-up question to that, we have two questions. So the first is again from the same person, James, and he asks, DLC certification takes time. If you have a high efficiency fixture not yet on DLC, what do you do?
So I'll speak on my side of that, and I'll let the other guys speak. I had a fixture that was not DLC rated because there was not a category for it. And I had to submit consideration for that. And with that, I had to submit IES test reports. And surprisingly, they approved it, but it had to go through, not every fixture has a category. I don't believe DLC has a category for medium-based corncob lamps, for example. So I would say, talk to your utility people, and they may be able to guide you through that. And I'll let one of the other guys here pick up on that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Bob. 99% of the time, FirstEnergy is going to require that it's DLC. We have been able to work with them with the rare exception. So, if something is not DLC certified, it's definitely worth a conversation.
And I would like to add to that, for the 2 grants that we talked about, DLC is required unless it's not rated. Sometimes Energy Star will be accepted as well. And then we do have a follow-up, or a second question, I'm sorry. How can electricians assist homeowners in accessing lighting incentives for their home and grants for their business?
Well, I can take a piece of that, and that is visit the website. The utilities have great websites to really walk you through this. And there are different categories for residential. It's very different than the commercial rebates. But take a look at the website and print off the basic information. They all pretty much have basic sheets, and it just tells the story. And again, I'll let the other guys chime in on that one.
Yeah, same answer, Bob. So if you do have a residential customer, if that's the way I understand the question, FirstEnergy does have residential programs. If you're not sure how to find it when Jen sends out the presentation, just shoot me a note and I can get you in touch. Franklin is working with the FirstEnergy program on residential as well, so we have some contacts there.
And then I'll pick up on that grant side for the business. The Small Business Advantage Grant and the Rural Energy for America program are both for businesses only, not for homeowners. I know of nothing at the moment that grant-wise for a homeowner for energy efficiency. And I've looked into this a couple of times other than the rebate program. As far as the business goes, the Small Business Advantage Grant, the analysis is usually pretty simple. We are funded to help small manufacturers and industrial plants. So we have assisted with the analysis and the documentation required for a business. As far as REAP goes, there is a report depending on the size of the grant requested that must be submitted as part of the REAP application. And it does require a certified energy management manager's signature or a certified energy auditor. We do have those on staff here. And we can always assist, and you can always contact your local USD representative through the Rural Development Office, and they can talk with you in more detail about that. Do we have any other questions? Because I know we ran a little bit over. I think what we can do at this time, if you have any follow-up questions, please send them to pentap, PENNTAP @psu.edu. Like I said, we will be sending out a copy of the slides since we kind of flew through some of those really quick for you guys. And you'll have Tim and Ray and Bob's information as well. You can either email Pentap and we can forward on the appropriate person, or you can email the Bob, Ray, or Tim directly. I'd like to thank Bob, Ray, and Tim for taking time out of their day to host this webinar with us. It was really super informative. And we'll be working on another roundtable soon. We'll reach out when we know. So thank you again, and have a great day.
Thank you.